Vincent, we've had violent protests in Turkey over the weekend. What's this mean for markets as they opened this morning?
They opened quite negatively, actually. The Istanbul stock market is down about 7 or 8% so far today. Now, this is quite a sharp fall. I think it's down about 15% over the last 3 or 4 days, which is, I think, one of the sharpest falls we've seen in the market for a long time. Because for the last decade, Turkey has been a roaring bull market. And the Istanbul Stock Exchange is up about 9 times over the last decade, which is way outperforming the likes of Brazil, for example, even though it's not a member of the BRIC club. But this is quite a sharp reversal over the last few days that we've seen.
Was it due for a reversal? Was the market beginning to look overvalued despite the protests?
Oh, I think it definitely was looking overvalued. I think there's a bit of a gap between market valuation and sort of economic fundamentals in Turkey, which has existed for some time. What you're seeing in Istanbul and other cities across Turkey is a lot of sort of social unrest sparked by various things to do with the government and with government policy. But I think that for the last couple of years now we haven't seen much on the reform front from the Turkish government. So I think that reforms have slowed down, and there hasn't been much structural reform, and yet the market has continued to roar ahead. And I think there's a bit of a sort of gap between those two that's now being corrected.
So what sort of economy is it in Turkey, and how might structural reform be required?
Well, it's a very strong industrial economy. I mean, it has emerged very strongly from, it had a crisis back in 2000 and 2001, a massive banking crisis where lots of the banks collapsed. And so there's been the emergence of a strong industrial economy since then. The trouble is that the ownership structure is not very conducive to allowing capital to flow freely around the economy. So you have quite sort of oligarchic style ownership of companies, and families in control, individuals in control. And it doesn't really make for a very efficient kind of ownership. And as I say, there is a scarcity of capital, and that I think is holding back a lot of the progress that these companies could be making in terms of being more competitive and being able to expand.
Just finally then, do you think that this pullback that we've seen today is a temporary phenomenon, or do you think overseas investors might really start to think again about their exposure to Turkey?
Well, I think the overseas investors tend to be the majority owners of Istanbul shares, and they've made an awful lot of money over the last decade or so. And I think that there aren't that many growing economies around, and dynamic economies like Turkey. So I think that it'll continue to be a buy. But I think that there needs to be a bit more sort of reality-based investing in Turkey rather than the type of investment we've seen over the last decade, which was a lot of it was speculative.
I think the protests, if nothing else, will certainly give the investment community some pause for thought. Vincent, thank you very much.